Side quests are a fundamental part of pretty much every RPG, and yet, a lot of the times, they feel a little bit like an afterthought. In many cases, they feel like just another completion criteria to pad out the length of the game, and don't really offer too much besides just some money and maybe a little bit of experience. However, some games have figured out that side quests need to be a little bit more than random NPCs asking you to kill 5 goblins or gather up so many ferns. One such game that has done that remarkably well is that of Final Fantasy XVI. The latest release in the long-running and ever-changing series brought with it probably some of the most compelling side quests to do in the series. And there are 3 reasons that we're going to explore in this video. The first is that they help expand upon the lore and the geopolitical consequences of the main story. The second is that they help expand upon the backstories of major and minor characters alike. And the third is that they sometimes unlock mechanics or in-game rewards that cannot be received in any other way. And if this is the type of video you like to see, be sure to like and subscribe. And also, in the comments, just a little bit of housekeeping. So I've got 3 posters now, and I've got this space right here. What should go here? Like, leave an idea in the comment as to what I should put here. So we're going to start with some of the side quests that help build out the world more. These are some of your more minor side quests. And while this is pretty commonplace in a lot of games where side quests will actually expand upon some of the, deeper elements of the lore that aren't super important for understanding the main story, I feel like Final Fantasy XVI plays it a little bit both ways. There is some deeper lore, but there's also some ones that really help to explain the way that the world works, and provide pretty important details that the main story seems to omit. A good example of this is a pair of side quests that are given to the player right before the second time skip in the story. These 2 quests involve pretty minor, no-name characters, but really go to show the way in which the world of Valencia, and in particular the Empire, treat bearers and don't even see them as human. The first of them involves a case where Clive is mistaken for a bearer that a lord had recently bought, and was sent to go slay a wolf that was attacking his son. Unbeknownst to the player at the time, it was actually a bit of a game, and the bearers were supposed to be killed by the wolf as a twisted form of entertainment. And while in the end, Clive ends up defeating this wolf, which then prompts the boy to get his father to buy a new wolf, which then promptly kills them, it goes to show the way in which bearers are not just treated as a source of free labor, but as disposable. It doesn't matter if they die, because the wealthy will just buy new ones, which is a really horrible way to view human lives. The second one involves this little girl who asks Clive to help find her lost pet. And while initially the implication is that this is just a dog, it turns out what the girl is actually referring to is a bearer that her parents bought, who is close to being completely taken by what's called the Crystal's Curse, where those who naturally have the ability to use magic slowly turn to stone. This is the first point where these characters are directly confronted with the humanity of bearers.
Is that all she was to you? A plaything? Do you really not care that she's dead?
She's not dead. She's a rock.
That? The Crystal's Curse? That's just how she died. And now she's gone forever. Giving another bearer her name won't change that.
No, don't say that.
It's true. And without that brand, she would have been just another girl. Somebody's daughter. Just like you.
But Dad said bearers don't have parents.
They do. Parents that give them away. Families they'll never see again. But you became Chloe's family when you took her in. Remember that. And remember her.
Another really important one for the lore comes towards the end of the game, which involves some pretty important and world-changing things, such as the origin of the enslavement of bearers, and a grand conspiracy to keep that information hidden from the general public, which completely recontextualizes so much about this world, and is really odd to have been relegated to a side quest of all things. However, in all of these cases, this gives you reason to engage with the side quests, because you never know what kind of important information you might end up drawing from these. Moving on to the second type of reason you want to do quests is that some of them are given to you by some pretty important characters to the story. And these are where those characters' backstory is explored. So throughout the game, Clive meets many people who are sympathetic and in some cases even beneficiaries to the cause. And they're given a brief introduction when you first pass through those areas. However, the reason as to why they're supporting the cause is left largely unexplained. However, later in the game, quests in these areas open up involving these characters, which then gives the reasoning as to why these characters are doing what they're doing. It features for them complete arcs, and in some cases might even develop the people around them who otherwise would have just been other NPCs in the background. And it's a pretty brilliant way to do it. These characters are not super important to the main plot that's going on, which largely revolves around Clive and his inner circle. However, they're not insignificant characters and are risking their entire livelihood to help this kind of fringe cause. And so the game masterfully decides to give them their own side quest chains to explain those details. Beyond just these beneficiary characters, there are other really important characters like Otto, who you learn how he met Sid and got involved in the cause through the end of a side quest. Not some monologue or character moment in the story, a side quest. So it's a very important character detail that you might miss if you don't choose to do the side quests. One last example of this, and this one I have to talk a little bit more in detail about endgame content, so skip to this time code if you don't want to hear that information. All right, so there are two pretty major side quests at the end involving Jill and Joshua, the secondary and tertiary protagonists of this game. They are second only to Clive in terms of their story importance, and significant moments with them in Clive and the conclusion to parts of their arcs are given in a set of side quests. In Joshua's case, it's the one where the Undying find their father's will, and they end up going out to complete and receive what was ultimately their birthright before going to visit their father's grave. In the case of Jill, we see her side quest culminate in a significant character moment, and one that affirms the relationship between her and Clive. Something that, in most other Final Fantasy games, would be pretty main story content. Like, this is the main couple of this game, and their final major romantic moment is optional. You can miss it if you're only following the main story. So between all of these details, if you really want to understand all of the characters around Clive, and in some cases even Clive himself, you have to complete these quests. They're not truly optional in the way that, say, the hunts are. And lastly, we're going to delve into the in-game rewards that certain quests provide. This is introduced pretty quickly after the second time skip, where you see occasional quests that have a plus sign instead of an exclamation mark. This indicates that these quests provide a benefit beyond just the traditional rewards. The first of these that the player runs into is the one that gives the player the ability to ride a chocobo. If anything sets the stage as to the importance of plus quests, it's this. Other examples include ones where Clive is literally expanding his bag or increasing the potency of healing items, which is extremely beneficial, especially if you're like me and are not the most adept at action games and could benefit from a little extra healing capacity. Some of the other benefits are a little bit more mundane, but in the case of the Blacksmith Blues questline, which also helps to develop the character of Blackthorn, provides Clive access to some pretty important equipment, including his ultimate weapon. So if you want to forge the ultimate weapon, you have to do the side quests. All in all, giving more tangible benefits beyond just money and experience gives players that incentive. It's the reason games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 have the hero quests, which give you additional party members and classes to use. These may be optional and not required to complete the story, but they're pretty important to how you play the game, so you kind of are encouraged to do them. Overall, this is just a few ways that Final Fantasy XVI has found a way to make side quests something worth doing. This is one of the few games where I've actually done all of the side content. One, because there wasn't that much and it was paced pretty well. You only get really 2 to 5 between major story beats until the end, when you suddenly get like 10 all at once, which makes them more approachable in my eye. It takes only about 30 to 60 minutes to knock them all out. You're not taking 5 hours between major story beats to do a whole bunch of random side quests. But part of the reason I started doing them was because people were saying, you need to do the side quests. There are major important details in this game that are only obtained through doing them. And honestly, I'm glad I did. I feel like my enjoyment of Final Fantasy XVI and my appreciation for its story and world came from doing the side quests. And so if you play this game, I would highly recommend you do the same. And it's also something I hope other developers take note of and start to incorporate into their game designs. And that's really all I have to say. This has been a bit of a shorter one, but I hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you guys next time.